Can't believe we're in there. All right. Good night, everybody. Good night. Welcome to Fatherhood Talks. We have a very informative show for you tonight. We'll be talking about, our topic of the night is child support versus supporting the child. And that's, that as we think about that being one of the major type of topics that comes into play as a father and in fatherhood. One of the things is, is it child support or is it supporting the child? And how do those two things look? And do they look different? And what, as our little picture has showing us tonight, what's real child support. So we're going to be able to jump into that tonight. Let me go ahead and let the panel introduce themselves. Again, I'm Ron Osborne Williams, this Fatherhood Talk. We'd like you to like, share, subscribe. If you want to hear more content and conversations like this. Panel, take it away.
Eugene Robert Bernard, father of two.
Hey, good evening. My name is Lionel Lightborn. I am a father to a tribe of 7.
I'll go. My name is Ed Tenney. I have 3 steps and 3 biologicals and a grandbaby.
And a grandbaby. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yonel or Fred, you guys want to say anything? If not, we'll let you stay.
Yonel Mondemar, father 5.
Okay, great. Thanks, Yonel. Fred, maybe you were saying something. Maybe your signal's not great, but it's okay. So let's jump right into this conversation right here. I think this is one that is probably, as I would say, it's probably one of the biggest fire starters in the relationship sometimes between men and women when it comes to having children. We have this idea that what has determined what child support looks like, or as we say, child support, or is it supporting the child? And I would ask the panel, what you see when you see a statement like child support versus supporting the child, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? How do you kind of measure that? What does it look like? How does it feel? What does it even spark in you and the feelings of yourself as a man and as a father? What's the first thing you start thinking about when you see some kind of title like that?
Well, I'll start off. For me, when I see that child support versus supporting a child, it automatically goes from, in my mind, monetary versus emotional. That child support is that monetary that you give versus the supporting the child is that emotional support of being there, being involved, and being engaged as a parent. And so I look at those two as, bookends when it comes to the child. Now, a lot of people shun child support, but it's necessary evil. There are some fathers who aren't giving monetarily wise and need to be forced to do so. And there are some fathers who are giving willingly and being there in both ways, financially and emotionally. So when it comes to that, that's how I look at it and that's how I view it.
Okay. Well, I think I heard my pastor say one time, some people, he didn't say most people, he said some people beg for what they need and buy what they want. And so when it comes to child support, it's a matter of need and want. Child support by itself is a need, you understand, that comes out of, that should have come from a place of want. And so when you're being made to do something out of an obligation, and so you're forced to do something out of obligation as opposed to out of your natural appreciation of what you birthed into this world, your own creation, that will probably never turn on you as much as you turn on it, or them rather, then that's in itself, it's worthy of the death penalty. And it sounds a little harsh because I think we've been so civil and so merciful that it was a time that if you didn't take care of your child, that was worthy of death or the death penalty. And so just to know that even God frowns upon it, not taking care of your child, then the civil obligations that the country place on parents, not just men, but women too, who don't take care of the responsibilities of their children, is a whole discussion that we gotta peel back the onion on in this conversation.
Any thought about that, Ed?
Well, I'm not so sure that I'm qualified to make any comments in that. I am not separated or divorced, or I have not parted company with any children that I have made or created. So I guess I'm in agreement with Brother Menard in the sense that, you have the ability to monetarily contribute, and you also have the ability to emotionally contribute and spiritually contribute. I guess from a personal experience, me being Carter's stepdad, I can only, I guess, deal with what is given by his biological father. It's probably not where his mother would like it to be, but you get what is given, I guess, and you can't complain from there. But from a me to another, I don't have any experience with that, so I'm not exactly sure how to comment.
Yeah, well, I guess one of the things, I'm glad that you said that, because you bring to a place that I think that is a narrative that I want us to kind of dispel, this idea that there's this, sometimes there's a feeling, and I see this in a lot of fathers. Sometimes I work with them who are in the same house with their mother, with their children and their wife, and sometimes they say, "Well, that issue is not my issue," right? Because I support my children, and sometimes I think that it is a natural that many fathers sometimes think and feel that they're supporting their children. Parents are supporting their children. I won't just say fathers, but parents believe they're supporting their children because they're taking care of their needs. And I see largely today, they take care of a lot of their wants. But my concern is them taking care of their being. And sometimes they have these kids, that you have a kid and you're saying this kid has everything they need. And I don't understand why they're still having problems, and why they still acting up, and why they still doing these things. And sometimes it's because I think that we as fathers, and I think that we don't have the best playbook sometimes to say, like, and I like to sometimes equate it almost to like football, basketball type of thing. If you had a playbook of plays, and that playbook of plays won you one championship, right? You say, well, but you was in one of those little small leagues, one of the small college leagues, right? And you was winning the championships. But when you was doing so good, you got moved up to the next AA, I think another level of the college. He was getting you behind beat to death by these schools, and you didn't understand why. And I think the point of that is because your playbook was good for where you was at, but that wasn't a winning playbook overall for all of football. And so I think sometimes as fathers, some fathers who where they're supposed to be doing the things they're supposed to be doing, sometimes we don't know that we are missing some things. Are we being the best that we can be? Are we engaging our kids in a way that we can? And sometimes because we have the ability to do so. You have these fathers out here who might not have some fathers don't have the ability, some fathers do. So when we start looking at child support, and I love the idea of child support versus supporting the child, because I think that it shows that this could happen on both ends. The child could be staying with you or not staying with you. You could be doing neither. And the child, and vice versa, you could be doing both. Them staying with you or not staying with you. So I think it's not so much of the situation. It's kind of like, what are we doing? And what do we know how to do? I think it's so easy to tell people, oh, you should do this and do that. But if we have a history of being removed, and I say this very strongly, being removed from the families that we start, and it becomes normalized for us to remove ourselves from the families, we think sometimes just being with the family is all we need to do. If I'm there, I'm good. And that's why I even think of sometimes there are people who get involved and say that I'm going to be a good guy, so I'm going to marry this lady because I got her pregnant, right? But you don't love her. You don't love her. You say, I'm just do the right thing. And sometimes that we see, and I guess sometimes we have seen that doesn't become the right thing because it becomes a very tenuous relationship. Whereas if if you say, hey, listen, we're not going to be in this place, but let us work in a place to raise these children together because we can. And I can respect you, you can respect me, and it's not because I think most of the time what ends up happening, the wool get pulled under the woman, in this case. Guy tried, and it's not intentionally, the guy tried to be a good guy, he tried to do the right thing, but the right thing ain't really the thing that he wanted to do. And so now he's doing something he don't want to do. And she may not be wanting to do it. She might be saying, well, I don't want to raise this kid by myself, so I'm going to be with this guy. I know I've seen that many times in domestic violence relationships where the woman didn't want to raise a child on her own, and she stayed with this guy just because he was the provider, he could provide for them. And it's just so many little factors that we as fathers have to kind of remind everybody about, because I think that sometimes people just say, hey, a child supporting child issue is, and I think like you said, Ed, that's people who are not, have divorced, separated, that's really their issue. And sometimes we find that it can be just a family issue overall for fathers. In the home, outside the home, continuing to love, not love, and so on, et cetera. So I just want to open our mind to know that fathering, I think our father to be fathers, use fatherhood is a continuing process of learning and development.
You raise a very good point about being in the home and just providing child support. And it goes back to what I was saying about when we talk about emotional, and you talk about engaging and being there with the child, it's more of that contact and experience that you're applying to the situation. Going back to what you were saying, even using a football analogy, sometimes as fathers and parents all together, we get so encompassed in making sure that they have everything that they need, because we got to go to work, we got to live, do that piece of it, and we get so entrenched in the financial support of it versus the emotional support, because we feel that, well, if I'm giving you everything that you need, then I'm showing you that I love you, then I show you that I care.
Mhm.
And we forget to actually give that piece of involvement. So you can actually be within the home, like you said, and only be giving child support. And that's a very crucial thing that you said. And even when you use your example and using a play, just a little piece of the example that you use when it came to the football analogy, sometimes we have to study the playbook of the child, because the child has their own playbook. And we're coming with our playbook. And unless we start to analyze, because even when you talk about, football, they don't just study their playbook, they watch tapes of the other team so they can understand how to maneuver and how to defend against whatever they're going to do. And so that's what we also have to do as parents, and even as fathers. We have to study the playbook of our kids so that we can understand the world that they're in, and we can adapt accordingly.
Yeah, and the playbook of the other parent.
Correct.
It is nothing more than recognizing that this is a job. It ain't, I know a lot of people be like, oh, I can just do it. This is a job. It is work. If you want to be successful at it, if you want, if you want to have the best for your kids. And I definitely, the playbook is not just yours, but the team playbook, the defense playbook, the offense play. You got all this to work on the one team to be able to get to where you need to get to. And sometimes we're not even thinking about it. We're thinking, hey, we don't even have the foresight to even think about it. We're just trying to survive. That I even got this kid right now.
And there's no retirement plan. You're a parent till you die. That's it. So,
we were talking about books, and I think too often we're conditioned to, I think particularly as men, but I would think we are socially conditioned to compare fatherhood to a playbook, when fatherhood should be really compared to a memoir. And we all know the difference between a playbook and a memoir. You understand? A playbook is for games and for a particular game, and memoirs is for from life experience, written from life experiences. And so I think when we start to change the narrative and understand the difference on how we're going to translate and relate to our children and future generations of father and children, then we have to engage that in a memoir sense, where as a playbook, you're preparing for games and it's more of a competition, whereas as a memoir, it becomes a psychological or biological or sociological science that prepare you more for the companionship as opposed to the competition of parenting. And so whatever comparison that we use, then we're going to probably follow that that concept of that comparison. So when we see things more like a memoir versus a playbook, then we will start to fall in the memoir sense of what it means to truly be an intimate part of your child relationship, as well as their mother and society as a whole. And so that's just my thought on it.
Well, let me throw this in here. I was driving today and I was listening to Dr. Boyce Watkins, This Black World, and he was making I looked at it because he was talking about the Black Panther 2 movie that was coming out, and he had some concerns about what the movie might present to people. And I know as much as Black Panther is like Black people's new thing, is our new Black thing. And and he was speaking about how it looks at from the trailer that he sees that he doesn't see any Black men in that. Like, you don't see any Black men doing anything, Black men being a part, Black men leading, Black men, being even are trying to be fathers. And I was thinking to myself, well, I can't say yet because I didn't see the movie, but as I know, as the trends that I see in entertainment and commercials presently, we don't see us doing anything. We almost, it's like every time I look, it's like erased. And it's almost in this narrative that, hey, our families can be raised by the women alone. Like, you're stronger, but that's not the same narrative for other people. And I think that we know that's not the narrative for anybody. You know, women can't raise family alone. Even if that's all they had to do, they still need help, even if it's not from the father, but extended family and other people. And so it's a scary narrative that I feel that, because I think that we are so conformative to when we see something and say, oh, if we don't have an importance, if we're not in a role there, we don't got to do it. You know, it don't affect me. They can do it without me. You know, if somebody say, hey, if I say, hey guys, we'll have a car wash. And then we start the car wash without you. And then you call and say, hey, y'all still doing the car wash? And I say, yeah, we already started, man. You know, if you want to come, whatever, guess what you might likely do? You'll say, oh, they don't need me, so I'm just going on back to my crib. Different than if I say, when you call me, I say, hey man, we need you to bring some ice, some water hoses. We waiting on you to really get started. Then you say, oh man, I have a responsibility. I'm gonna get to the car wash right now. I'm sorry I took so long. And I think that we're starting to see that in a lot of entertainment commercials as a narrative that we are not needed, or we're not there, and that our women can do it on their own. And I'm scared for that, because I'm scared that we will really buy into that, both us, the women and the men, and it will really destroy our families, because our families have already been torn apart in multiple ways in this country in some way or another. And people, you know, we take things for light and for granted and say, oh, the father didn't want to be there because he didn't want to be there. They ain't say nothing about when the CIA was bringing crack into the neighborhood and the fathers was even smoking it or selling it, and that's why they gone. You know, and then when they was gone, then the mamas was on it, and then the kids was left by themselves. So we conveniently sometimes leave those things and I say those are our own issues that we cause to ourselves, and that bothers me so much, because I know that that's not a part of what people would cause for themselves, and we have to be conscious. And I don't think sometimes we're being conscious. We're just enjoying the things, the entertainment that comes, and we're saying it's good, and not even, you know, looking a critical eye and saying, hey, okay, T'Challa is dead, his dad dead. So who's the men in Wakanda now? Is there any men in Wakanda? We know the other dude ain't even gonna be there, so he ain't even gonna be in the movie. No. So he gone. So maybe, you know, so just leave all the women there in our community to take care of everything. So really they like Wonder Woman, the Amazon tribe. You know, so you know, it's petty. I think somebody said it's petty, but for me it's not petty, because I think it sets this narrative that people will follow and say, oh, it's cool. You know, this idea that the deadbeat dads is our thing. I have a problem with deadbeat dad. The idea of deadbeat dads means this is a person who has the ability and the means and the finance to do, and they refuse to. That's a big difference from a person who don't have the means or the ability and the finance and not able to do. Two different people.
I have a question of those. I guess it's two questions.
Mm-hmm.
One, if you guys, your child's mother, have they remarried or partnered up, and if so, how do you insert your uniqueness or your fatherness into that new blended scenario where your child is now under the auspices of another male father figure?
Glad you asked that question. I can be an expert on this.
Yeah, we got. I think this panel is probably the expert. So this little panel.
Well, to answer that question honestly, you'd have to. They have to. The father or the significant other or that the mother of your child's spouse or her husband have to meet you doing that. And so when they meet you doing that, it's nothing to have to be established because my fatherhood was already established in the life of my child. There was nothing to establish. There was nothing to reestablish. You understand? And I'm talking about just on presence alone. And I'm just omitting participation. But the fact that, and it works really good because when you're there, when you're actively there, this is why I don't think men should really get caught up on or overthink so much of what they don't have as opposed to what they do, because most men have more things going for them than they have going against them. Most children don't need probably a good half of what we think they need, particularly at that particular age. Those needs evolve as time go on and as they grow. But just your presence alone is the first down payment on your child support. And then not only works out for the child, but it also works out for that child's mother. And here's why. The fact that I was there, and I got 4 children from 4 different mothers. And the fact that I was there for each one and a presence to be felt, then there was a standard there, right? Even if I wasn't a husband, there was a consistent standard and presence there that the guy knew that, okay, now I have something to measure by. And you may not think it's true, but it's instinctively, as animalistic as it is, instinctively true. And so when you see another guy there that's taking care of his child, you understand, and didn't leave the mom to be abandoned or welfare recipient, or simply put, didn't leave that mom to not have a standard at all. And I have about one, I think about, it was one of my kids' mother who father had passed, successful guy, but he passed away. But the fact that when there's not a male standard there, so even if you had a mother of your child and she wasn't raised by her father, but you stepped in as her child's father, then that becomes that male standard that she needs to make other males respect her. And you may not believe it, but it's instinctively true. And so because I had that standard there, and I'm like, listen, my child don't need his mother may need another man, but my child don't need another man or another father. And that standard was there without me even having to say it. And so some things or some information and some intelligence are instinctive, right? And some are informative. And I think just by my interaction, my presence, when that man came in, seeing me taking care of my father and understood, my children rather, and seeing that is the standard, and that's something that he's going to have to navigate with. You understand? Because that was an ocean that was already moving. You understand? And so he just get in and be who he is in that particular relationship, with my child's mother. And we are kind of like sync like a puzzle. And so, and that mutual respect came in because once my children, again, instinctively, when my children showed respect for him, that they earned. You understand? This wasn't just like, oh, was it given? I'm like, no. The husbands of my children's mother, all of my children, I'm talking about unanimously respect their mother's husband. And vice versa, their mother's husbands also respect me. And so that was something that was not so much planned, but a given. And certain things that we were raised with, or certain basic ethics. Like, even if you didn't have any parents, you got just basic ethics that tell you to respect whatever, to respect a respectful climate.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why I asked that question is my own personal circumstances with my youngest son, my stepson, Carter. His dad is involved, but not um, involved to the degree I think um, maybe his mom would like him to be. So uh, I think by default, because I'm here, the child lives with me 24/7. He's not going back and forth to the house. Um, I kind of get like the favorite dad status from my stepson, and it really disturbs me because um, I guess I don't want him to make a decision like that. Um, his dad is his dad, and me knowing about fatherhood, there's something about the biological dad that transcends. You know, it just there's something transcendental about the biological dad, and I don't want him to miss out on that. However, it just greatly disturbs me when, I kind of get the favorite dad status, and it's not like I can go and make his dad um, be more daddy. I guess
Yeah.
I can't make him do that, and neither is it my responsibility to make him do that. But I guess the thing that I have to deal with is that disturbance that I feel inside because, um, I know I'm there. I'm doing my best to be a father figure, but I'm not his biological dad, who is around and who has uh, been there for him, but I guess not to my son's satisfaction to where, he would be able to say, hey, I got two great dads. He's not saying that. He's
Right.
saying, I have a great dad. And I know it's because, he's with me all the time.
Right. Yeah.
So
that
how
that
do I
makes
deal
it,
with those feelings?
Eddie, I think that makes it great. And I was going to ask you that when Lionel finished, because I know it's what Lionel was just speaking about made it really clear, because you came into a situation where everybody was coming in with a certain energy when Lionel was describing. And so you had people coming in with a certain energy. But I think that by default, you're going to be the favorite dad because you're the one who lives. And the only reason
I get that.
And in default, because you are a good dad. So if you was a horrible dad, right? You wasn't good to him. If you didn't give him the love and what he felt he needed, he would probably rebel from you and those things. But he's still young. Still young. I think about when he starts to get his puberty, and some of the rules and things that you may have may become that tension time, that then when his dad probably becomes the most important, because his dad is not the rule person, but his dad can then come back and reinforce those same rules that's difficult in the house that he might have difficulty with and can't understand. And it's hard. And I know I'm just imagining how it feels that to like feel like you taking somebody else's son away from you. You know what I'm saying?
That's farthest from the truth there.
You're not trying to, but listen, I'm here. I'm here. I'm out of sight, out of mind, out of engaged. I'm disengaged. So I'm dealing with him on a day-to-day basis. His dad, if his dad is engaged, but not at the level that you would, so he's always gonna come in second. And it's not. And that is you're a good man, because some jokers wouldn't even care. Be like, listen, they put salt on the wound, put a little salt on the wound. And so it is a positive thing, and it really talks about some of the things we need to be thinking about as fathers when we're doing these kind of co-parenting, blended family things, to really build and for us to be thinking about it and discussing not only with the mom, but with the son and with the other father, saying, hey man, I feel uncomfortable that your son got me number one. I want him to make you number one, and I could be number two, but and that kind of conversation opens up a door for everybody to be exposed to it and say, oh, okay, but again, we go back to what you was talking about, Lana, before, playbooks. Eddie, you got to you have the kids already in that playbook that you already ran. You run it, went to another league and try to run the whole, and you're using some of your experiences from your older kids to do in this situation with stepkids. And so when you start really looking at that, the question is, does this father also have anything to base his experience on? And that's where we have the biggest flaws in our fatherhood as fathers, is what are we basing our experience on how to be fathers from? There's a perfect example of this, a research that I was reading about second-time fathers, second marriage fathers, that they do extremely better with their second set of kids than they did with the first set. And not that the kids got anything different, it's just that I did it one time and my situation is different. I'm much older, I'm much mature, I'm much more settled in my life. I can really spend time and go in the room and talk to them. I don't have to be thinking about working on a report till 11 o'clock at night. Thinking about, these you have a different dynamic. So, and you're looking at, and I think that's a part of what you're talking about, Eddie, looking at the difference between how you have the engagement time that maybe his dad doesn't have. So he's building like, who is checking for me? This is who my number one is. If I had to call somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning, who I'm gonna call? I'm gonna call dad. Well, what dad? Dad at home, but that doesn't mean that dad outside the home wouldn't still come and pick you up, So and again, a young kid, again, we're talking about the kids' developmental age. I know that Jean can kind of speak of somewhat about that developmental age of their attachment and how they become so attached to who is present. We see that many times with dads and moms are separated and there is no other people, just mom and dad, and the kids are 100% bonded with mom, and dad is kind of like on the outside looking in. You can't get a word in edgewise.
No, I was just about to say that. I was going to allude to that, because what happens also is that bond, that tie he has to you also deals with how well you and your mom's his mom's relationship is going. And so he looks at that also, and the way you treat the mom reflects on how he's going to treat you, because the reciprocation of the way you treat the mom and how she now treats you is only going to reflect on how the kids should see you and how they should treat you. And so if she's always saying positive things about you, like, with your presence and being there, it's going to rub off on the kids. And like Ron was saying, it's going to happen now, but as they get to teenagers, you're going to see them pushing away a little bit, because there's going to be more independence that they're searching for. And so your rules are going to be too authoritarian for them, right? Too authoritative. And so what they're going to do is they're going to try to push back to see their boundaries and their limits. So you're going to have that bumping of the heads, right, at some point. But overall, because of the bond that you've established with them as a kid, he has a foundation to come back to, right? Now, you said it earlier that you're there 24/7. So the attachment to you is going to be a little bit more, because you're the one probably picking him up, dropping him off, buying him his basic needs. You're meeting those needs that are an everyday need for a child. And so that's why the bond is going to be a little bit stronger with you than it is for the dad, especially if the dad's not coming around and filling those basic needs that the child has. And so, of course, he's going to put you more of the father figure role based on all those other components around you, right? And so it's not so much, for me personally, I would tell you, I wouldn't feel bad about that, because it just shows, it's a testament to how good you are as a parent. Now, the question is, do you feel comfortable enough to just tell the father? Don't tell the father, anything more than, hey, you know what? Is there any way you can make a little bit more time to spend with the kid? But there's a way you got to say it, because once you deliver that message to a parent, that's an attack mode. So you're saying I'm not good enough. You're saying I'm not doing what I had to do as a parent. But there's a way you have to approach them to say, you know what, your child, and put it in the place of the child. I think he's craving more time with you. It's not that you're not doing what you have to be doing, but I think he wants more time with you.
Mm.
And that's just a natural thing for any child to want more time with their biological parent. But again, because, go ahead, Ron.
And you're right, Gene, and identifying what that time looks like. You know, I think that, and this is what I mean about, sometimes we'll say, I'm with my child, but what are we doing with that child? What are we imparting on it? What are we saying to them? What are we talking to them about? Are we just driving in the car with them from picking them up? We ask them how their day was. We ask them what they didn't do. You know, it's those things are very powerful. And then again, I'll come back to this part. Sometimes dads don't know that. They don't know. You know, I remember some of us was raised where our fathers, our actual fathers, didn't say 2 words to us ever. We was fed.
Mine was like that.
He didn't say 2 words to us ever. We didn't even think he loved us, but he was there, and that was just the way that he knew. And so when we look at, you know, the advancement that we have made as men, and our emotions and our expression, and how that, you know, falls over into fatherhood, a lot of us ain't on that boat. A lot of us, we ain't get on that. You know, a lot of us haven't been able to get onto that boat because we don't even recognize that. We don't identify that. And maybe because we also haven't just been exposed to it. So I think even in the pace of being able to expose, and I agree with you, Gene, it's a very, what you call that, slippery slope on how you approach. I mean, maybe Lionel has some of his skills that he was able to breach some of that with some of his co-parents.
Well, yeah, remember I have, like I said, I have 4 children from 4 different women, but I'm married to my wife who has no children from me, but have 3 children. You understand? And so we're about the quintessential blended Black Brady Bunch of sorts. But so I've experienced all the dynamics. I experienced something that's more, I guess, frustrating or more critical than displaced anger, right? And that may be displaced resentment in one of my children, because dad wasn't what she deserved. Let's just put it like that. And I think had he just tried, I'm like, listen, get the treasures out of the way. Had he just put in, I'm talking about the basic try to her, he would have been the world's greatest dad. And no matter how good I was to her, I still wouldn't be able to compete, because the connection between a biological parent and a biological child is so sacred. Mm-hmm. Listen to that word I'm saying. It's very sacred. There's no way, I'm going to be honest with you, you never could compete. I don't care how good of a stepfather you may be or surrogate father you may be, you can't compete, because you can't really make somebody ashamed of something that's theirs. That's the sacredness of that relationship. And so that child can experience the worst wrong with their biological parent and still have an unlimited source of forgiveness, as opposed to experience half of what they did with their non-biological parent or surrogate parent and be ready to cut them off at any given moment. And so I think we got to, and this was deep rooted in our culture, that we have to respect the sacredness, literally, and that's what, not just in our culture, but just as fatherhood in general. And we don't talk about that thing that's sacred with parents, just like it's sacred with mothers. And I told you earlier in the earlier show that the reason what's sacred between mother and child is that they both experience a trauma at birth, the same trauma at birth. Well, that sacredness runs over we have to establish what that sacredness is between father and child. And that's where the mystery starts to begin and unfolds for us. And so I think even and so much, I got a friend of mine, his wife, this is the most beautiful thing I've heard. It's the most simplest thing, but it's the most beautiful thing I ever heard. My friend's, a good friend of mine's wife, all she could say, she said, her father told her one thing, and you would be looking for some type of Langston Hughes type information. And when she told her the information, it was so simple but profound. She said, I remember my dad said these words. Her dad said, you play stupid ass game, you get stupid ass prizes. And when I first heard it, I didn't think nothing about it. But when I replayed it in my head, play stupid game, get stupid prizes. And that resonated. I'm talking about, this is a young lady who's very successful, a great wife. And so she's so balanced, but I'm like, the one thing that that stands out for her is play stupid ass games, get stupid ass prizes. And I had to actually, because I was, I would have been quick to dismiss it because the information or the advice wasn't packaged, right? To the way that most people would deem successful advice to be packaged. But the more I went over it in my mind, I'm like, wow, that is deep. And the reason it was deep for me is because it impacted her and then shaped the way she did things, which transferred her from her father to her husband, in which they have a great marriage. And this is one of the women I highly respect as a wife to one of my good friends. And so we have to look at the dynamics and the evolution of okay, the relationship between father and child. How does that shape that child, or what type of adult is that relationship actually shaping that child into? And I get to see the outcome of that.
And I'll tell you that for me, I'm sure there's a lot more, but when you talk about that sacred bond between the father and the child, it's simple. Teach. A father's there to educate in many different ways within that family, within that family. Because what we demonstrate when we talk, the way we treat the parents, the way we treat the children, the way we treat society, it's mimicked by the way our kids will treat. I mean, have you ever been you ever seen, for instance, in some households where you see the kid just keeps hitting on the mom and you're like, yo, that must be because the dad does that. Because it's a dynamic that he's learned. You see what I'm saying? It's something you look at it and you're like, yo, because if he was in a household where the father was not always talking down to a mom or treating the mom a certain way, and when the child did something, the father stood up and said, you're not going to do your mom that way. There's no way he would do that in public to the mom. You see what I'm saying? And so when you look at the dynamics of where the father fits in, it's really to help teach, mold, and shape within that family. And that's where that sacred bond comes in. And I think that's what every child, in my opinion, yearns when it comes to the father, is that guidance, that wise old man that's just sitting there that's going to give you that advice, like you said, play stupid ass games, get stupid ass problems. It's those things that the father brings into the household and shapes into the family, and the legacy that he leaves when he then leaves, whether it is, he passes on, because all those memories and all those ideas and all that foundation is going to be passed on generation to generation. And that's just how I feel.
Well, we can take this back to the very simple nature and nurture. I think that, and I'll use Eddie's case that he's bringing to us as an example. Eddie is being a lot, he is doing the nurturing, and this nurturing that the son needs. But there's a nature that the son has with his dad that no one can give or take away. And it's not, and there's another part that I'm still on my campaign. Listen, our kids don't need us. We need them. Okay. This idea of, for a lot of fathers, out there who feel like, well, I gave my kid the money to support, I did this. It's a lot of trauma on you not to have the part of you, as Tupac would say, that has never been shady. Because after they become shady, then you see them for how you kind of feel like you're looking in the mirror. Before they were shady, you could look at them and have a joy, but you missed that. You wasn't there. And you don't have a way to keep that harness so it won't turn into who you are. And not saying who you are got to be bad, but sometimes who you are is good. But if we're not there to facilitate that, it can go to astray. It's like making something, we'll make this cake and we leave out some of the main ingredients, or we don't know what the main ingredients are or where they came from. That cake is never going to be like that supreme cake that you had. It's never going to be. It's not until you know where those main ingredients come from, and you begin to see it. And you can learn that just from knowing. A lot of people say, I don't want my child to know anything about their dad because he's going to ruin their life. And sometimes their life becomes even more ruined from that experience of not knowing, because you can learn from a negative as much as you can learn from a positive. Because where's the reinforcement? Where's the yin and the yang of this situation? But you realize that, okay, my dad is doing this, or my dad is out here like this. He doesn't want to be involved with me. I want to be involved with him. How do I measure that? How do I work that out? But if the dad doesn't, listen, and I know that they say that there's some out there, some ruthless parents, and I won't say just dad, parents, who can look at their kid and know their dad and never even say nothing to them. But not all the time they're doing that. But we looking at the contents of it. But what's the context of why they say? Like, them stories where the dad stayed down the street, the kid stayed in the house with his mom and the other, and he's seen the kid all the time. I don't know what show I was watching. And the man would always see the kid, and you could see him looking so mad all the time when he seen the kid. He wasn't mad because of the kid. He was mad because he couldn't give up what he couldn't man up to even be with his kid, to do anything with that kid, because it would ruin, I guess, some social construction of what he had, whatever was going on. And he needed that kid. As much as we want to say, forget these kids, as parents, we need our kids because they are our legacy. And if we don't add anything to it, what happens to our legacy? It's a rough scenario. I mean, you got a great situation. I won't say great, but you're in a good situation. Not so great for you to try to maneuver that, but it's a great situation to have that type of situation where, the son feels like, hey, you're my number one. But I keep thinking about you is number one. Listen, when he get up in the morning, who he see? He go to bed at night, who he see? Now, that don't mean I don't mean he forget about his dad. I know you don't forget about it. That because dad is there. But I think you bring something to this topic that we was talking about tonight that we haven't thought of. Many people not even thinking of. And this is where I love the idea that we don't have to. All these issues are not in the negatives. Sometimes we got a negative in the positive that we need to figure out. Here's a positive situation that is a situation where I got to figure out how I can feel about this, and how do I manage to make this kid feel okay and make my co-parent, the other dad, feel okay, that all of us can be on the same page for this child and ultimately for our family, because we are a family. I think that's another thing people got to listen. Families are formed in all kinds of ways, but a lot of times we like to say, oh, that ain't mine, that ain't this. Listen, that's your family. They your family. That the ex-husband, the baby daddy, the stepmama, the people in your family, like it or not. Because once the tree branch off to, that's why I love that when you look at the family, it's always on the tree, because the branches branch off. Listen, you can't chop pieces of it off without losing everything on that branch. So that person's still apart. they always going to be there, good, bad, or ugly. Sometimes we have to, work that out.
I think we'd have to start, and the way we have to do that is really be intentional about the narrative. Now, all of us, we can, I think, we can have our down days, but anytime, or your average days, but anytime that you're intentional and really intentional, because you have a stake in this game, Ed, and whatever your outcome is, you got to just decide whether your narrative is going to say, have competitive triggers versus companionship triggers. But competitive triggers, that's when you start putting things like number one, first, last, and things that way segregate the relationship between you, child, mother, and father. But when you start to use those companionship triggers, then one is going to do more unifying than the other. And so, but only you can really control that narrative. And so you're going to have to really choose your words on and how you're going to convey them, so you don't separate the overall goal you're trying to achieve with that father, because both of you guys are just as important to it. And you have to make that narrative just as important every time you speak about the father or the mother, and keep all of them on what they call an even keel. So it's going to be one hell of a balance, you understand? But that balance and that thought process have to always be intentional. And pretty much you'd have to almost use your fatherhood to advocate for his fatherhood. It's almost tribal. Even if he deserves it or whether he deserves it or not, you just got to understand the bigger picture and the bigger purpose here is fatherhood versus what type of father he may or may not be.
Hey, Lionel, I don't know why I keep telling people the LBGT community has given us opportunities and tools to be able to use for our families. You would normally say, hey, a child say, I got two daddies, right? It's normalized, it's becoming normalized for him to be able to say, for a son to say, I got two daddies. And my mom. So we're getting into a place to be able to, to utilize, let's utilize some of the normalization for the benefit of us. That's what I say. Listen, they bring some white bread and some peanut butter. Let's just make some peanut butter sandwiches with it. That's where we are, because normally it would feel an uncomfortableness for the kid to say, I got two dads, because the construction has been gonna have one dad, one mom. Now he can say, I got two dads. My dad that stay with me and my dad that stay at his house. And I go to my dad's house and I stay with my dad at home. Now we're changing that, because that, we don't think about how often that is a restraint on the kids to say something like that, to say they got more than one dad or more than one mom, or they got other siblings and those things. So they kind of like discount their families. Like they don't even talk about, I got stepbrothers and stepsisters. They don't even know the stepbrothers and stepsisters sometimes in those cases. Yes.
Ron, I want to add into that what you just said, that because there's this book at a library, and when you just said that made me remind me, it's a kid's book too at that. It's a kid's book. I'm gonna say is I take my kids to the library almost every day. I see this book and I'm just not forgetting. But it's like it says I have two dads, and it's saying that one is a stepdad and one is my dad. That like you said, go out of the way, and it shows that like one is into music, the other one's into science, and it's a when you say that makes me think of that book. That really because. And I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go for. I'm gonna go and pull it just for the next meeting, so I can show y'all what it. Well, I know I remember the name. I think it said My World of Two Dads or something like that. Mm-hmm. But that is what you just said. That right there, that book is a perfect example. And I'm gonna find it and I'm gonna bring it to the next meeting. Show y'all.
Yeah, that'd be great.
There was actually, with him saying that, there was actually a TV show a while back, like in the 80s, early 90s, called My Two Dads. Right. So the premise of the show was this little girl, the mom drops her off, and there's two guys that could be the potential father, because she was dating both of them around the same time. Now, they take the child, they bring her in, they move in together, they raise this child, right? And the crux is like Travis was saying, they had two different personalities. One was more, more straight cut. The other one was more free going. So it showed the balance of within the household also, but then it also allowed for not being, and this is the one thing that I took away from the show. There was never a sense of jealousy, right? Because only one of you can be the dad, but we're both going to treat her like she's our daughter. And no one tried to overplay the role into saying, you're stepping on my toes because I'm the father, and vice versa. So when you relay that to, for me, when you transition that to families today, and how you may have a biological father who has a stepfather moving in, they feel threatened. And it's kind of like I'm the father, you can't do ABC. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be more of a welcoming, because you're going to be there helping me with my child. Because when I can't be present, you're going to be present. And so it should be more like Lightborn was saying, a companionship type environment versus a competitive or comparative. Right.
The language, Gene, because and I think Lionel said this, we have to be mindful of our language.
Exactly.
When you tell somebody their child or my child, that puts them in the frame that it's not our child.
Mm-hmm.
And it says something when you say, we need to have a talk about our child.
Yeah.
It's kind of deep right there. Say what, Eddie?
That's kind of deep right there.
It's a positive all the way around, because so often we don't really use that language. We always using the singular when it comes to children. And we really should be using them again. Here we go. See, here go the LBGT community giving us some more stuff, some plural pronouns and stuff. But here is, if it's present, let's use it to benefit of what we got to do for what we need to do for our families. Saying the word us and them and we, using those plural when we talk about the child, because it does two things. It gives a deference to say, hey, we are both in charge of this. And it also says that it's not for me to do alone. Mm-hmm. So often when I say I say, you ain't gonna do nothing with my child, immediately what the person here say, oh, so it ain't my child. Okay, so you go ahead. All right, listen, you just gave me the get out. The out to be like, okay, I'm gonna let you do what you gotta do with your child. And you don't really mean it because you're hurt. You're hurt by the idea, and that's the other part. We're hurt by the idea that when they say they child, you ain't gonna take my child out here. It hurts. And anybody say it doesn't hurt, that for someone to say mine and to take you away from your rightful place or where you should be with your child, they lying to themselves. You're lying to yourself. You can pretend like it hurts. It's not, it doesn't feel good. That's like saying that you ain't no man. Don't pretend like that ain't. It's the same kind of feeling you feel when you know you're a man, you did something, you ain't no man. Just like saying, my child, our child. And it's a place to give that kind of deference that is needed to open that gate for this co-parenting stuff to kind of happen. For both fathers, mothers, grandmas, uncles, aunties, because that is where we begin to really start using that village type mentality for the child.
And that's the thing. I think socially, probably close to 100 years, if not the beginning of time, that we struggle between two narratives. And when you talk about keeping the balance, and I had this conversation that almost turned my turned the office upside down. Just a simple, I think it's a rhetorical question I raised. I said, are you being truthful or are you being honest? And there is a big difference between being truthful and being honest. And what happened was, of course, that started this big debate, whatever the case may be, without, and again, people were leaning more towards being honest without even finding out, is there a difference between being truthful and honest? And quite frankly, there is. The difference between being truthful and honest is, one, exclude somebody. Being honest will always exclude somebody. That's a fact. And being truthful is inclusive of everybody. That's the difference. And so when we're talking about being, and most of the time people are so satisfied with being honest, they don't value being truthful. That's the difference. And so until we can reach the level of being truthful as opposed to being honest, when we be honest, it's almost always self-serving. But when you're truthful, it actually serves the society that you're in. Not just you, but actually serves society in. And so, contrary to popular belief or what idiot ever said, there's no such thing as absolute truth. I'm like, yes, there's a lot of absolute truth. We absolutely need X, Y, Z to survive as human beings or as living organisms. And so there's so many truths, but then we'll let a narrative slip in without even questioning the logic of it. And half of the time, the narratives that get convoluted or manipulated are not the complex narratives. It's actually the simple narratives that's actually manipulated to become complex. And so again, when we're talking about, I'm like, yeah, you'd have to ask yourself, whatever you're getting ready to say, and that could be in anything, not just parenting, but in anything that you're a part of. Am I being truthful or am I being honest? Because to be truthful takes accountability for self, right? And make others accountable as well. But to be honest, you want to make everybody accountable but you. And so it's the simple logic that we have to rethink and recondition ourselves to think for ourselves. Because most times we don't think about for ourselves. I mean, we've been inundated with TV and entertainment has superseded empowerment. And I don't even think we know the difference now between entertainment and empowerment. And so we said,
no. Say that part again. I've been at a conference this week, and this is exactly what we were just talking about. The influence of entertainment against our well-known common sense.
Correct.
What you said that we don't even recognize the difference anymore. No. Just because somebody entertain us and they're popular, don't mean that they were right and they know what they're doing.
I agree. But you're talking about the difference between if we see it on TV, we think it's right. We're most actually psychologically conditioned think if it's on TV, it must be right. Or in certain cases, if it got a microphone, it must be right. You understand? And so if it's on the radio, it must be right. And so entertainment has become the new empowerment. Where no research, you understand? No research or just facts don't even matter no more. We just go on feelings, override the facts, and that's it. And so we say to ourselves, well, how could the court system overturn Roe versus Wade? I'm like, because, and you know what? And we don't think about it until it really impacts us. I can tell you factually, that's how. We've been so inundated with entertainment versus empowerment. Entertainment has become empowerment that people can do the most outlandish things you see on TV, and then it becomes law. So if we got anybody to thank for that, I'm like, well, thank ourselves. Don't blame them. Blame ourselves. And so, because when you see, I think Martin Luther King said it best, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice anywhere. And just because, and then I said, you didn't say anything when that injustice happened on the left side. Mm-hmm. And the minute it happens on your side now, oh, this is a big deal. I'm like, you should have spoke about it when I was mad about it. And guess what? And I think you said something and alluded to something earlier when you said somebody talking about, well, that don't matter. They just being, and when you was talking about, I think Dr. Boyce Watkins and somebody talking about, oh, you're thinking too much into it. You understand? Mm-hmm. That's the entertainment mindset. The
Right.
empowerment mindset, question that things to the thing, gets to resolve, research it, and gets to a logical and just outcome.
Mhm.
Nobody actually has the time to do that anymore. And the simple thing is what, like, time is going to end up being our undoing, because nobody actually wants to take the time to do it.
But one thing but people don't realize is that entertainment is the gateway to empowerment. Because what they do is, with your entertainment, they interject certain ideas and principles that they want you to be okay with later on. And so you'll see it introduced very slowly over time within your activities, where one day you're saying, man, they're showing a whole lot more of whatever it is, until it becomes something that you see so natural and normalized, so that when they present it into your face in reality, you're more accepting of it, and you're more allowing of it to pass. And so you're like, so entertainment, and even, news outlets and everything, I still call some certain news is entertainment, because they buy into that whole narrative of, we're going to tell you how you should think, so later on, when we need you to do what we have to do, you'll feel like you're thinking about it for yourself.
What you just explained then, Ron, was entertainment is not really the gateway to empowerment. Entertainment seems to be the way to disenfranchisement. And so I think, for the most part, that entertainment that's designed for you to think for others as opposed to others to think for themselves, yes, that's a disenfranchisement. Right. That's a disenfranchisement of the mind and the conscience. And so we got to understand the difference between what entertainment really exists for, because at the end of the day, it's about supply and demand. And so they're there to sell you something, if not to sell you. And that's the difference between the two. So I'm glad it's forums like this that allow us to be really critical in our thinking, because we have so much more on the line that's priceless, that no amount of product can really compare to it.
And it brings us right back to our topic to the night, because it was child support versus supporting the child. And that is a perfect example of what the idea of what people say child support should be has no part. The system has no part of supporting the child. They want the child support, but they won't even then say, hey, you need to support the child outside of this child support. And as it becomes okay. And then children begin to see it as, oh, have you ever heard a little kid say, Daddy, where my child support at? When you gonna just send a check over? Not, Daddy, you gonna come take me to Chuck E. Cheese. Daddy can take me to the park. Can we go fly a kite? Just so the kids now don't even believe that dads have any worth in supporting them other than through the child support check. Well,
Ron, you had mentioned something very early at the start of the meeting about their fathers have been forced away, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think culturally, we originally tried to compensate for that. There was a time where, if the dad went away, the grandparents would step in and help raise that child. Now the single mothers are like all by themselves. But I think part of the systematic structure that has come in, that there used to be, when the fathers were forcibly separated, now the fathers are willingly or selfishly abdicating their responsibility. And then systematically, the government has become the child supporters, the fathers. The government, to me, with some of these single women who have no recourse because the fathers have willingly stepped away, the government becomes the child supporter of that father, where their father should be. And the child grows up seeing that system as their dad, as the ones who took care of them. The welfare system has taken care of them. What is it? WIC has taken care of them. They grow up with all these other external systematic systems coming in, taking care of them, and they don't know how to be men or women because this nebulous system has come in and replaced the fathers, because a lot of the fathers has abdicated their responsibilities, and it was made easier for them to do that. I guess when you look from a historical perspective, they were forcibly removed. And I don't know, culturally, we've just kind of, accepted this stuff. There's no more fight anymore. We don't fight against that anymore.
I know a friend of mine who is, a friend of mine who has a judge down in Alabama, Selma, and the judge, Black woman, she does like family court. She doesn't do any of that no more. She says she gonna save her people. Listen, when they come into court, she telling them, y'all need to go work this out before you want me to work it out. Because the court order I'm gonna give you, you're gonna have to do. You're not gonna be able to not do it without being in violation of the court order. And so she tells them, go find me, we had a mediator service, go out there and figure out how y'all gonna work out to raise this child and to get on the same page and what y'all need to do. And that is a step, because that means that I'm not about to bail you out. You gotta strap your boots up and figure out how this works out, because you didn't need me to bail you out when you went to a house, on that booty call y'all made. Y'all didn't need me to bail you out then. So why now do I have to bail you out now? You was grown then. You was dropping it hot then. So how about now you guys drop the same hotness and how you gonna solve this problem together as two adults, And I think that, as you said, Ed, the system hasn't demanded that. The system said, "Come on, we'll take care of you," to their detriment, not to their benefit. See, we people believe the system helping you is to your betterment. It's not. It is to your detriment, because then you become dependent upon a system that eventually is not going to continue to support you. If you got one cow and you don't try to find another cow to make that cow, and you milk this cow until he dies, you ain't gonna have no milk no longer. And we know the system is set. Listen, we know how these systems are set up. This same single mom living in the housing place where if she was trying to get above and try to do better, they'll tell her she can't afford to stay in the place. They don't have any housing for low-income families, because low-income families don't include fathers. Let me say that again. Low-income housings do not include fathers. If the government is wanting to provide something for you, the father cannot be there. And that's where it seems to be the setup that we're talking about. Because if you gave the father and the mother the opportunity that use that low-income housing as transitional housing, and told them they had 5 years before they would have to move, and matter of fact, give them that subsidized rent, they would find a way to work it out, because I don't know any people who live in public housing who doesn't want to move into their own house. I ain't never seen somebody say, I just want to live here forever. I'm gonna live here, my grandkids gonna live. We gonna make this our new. No, people would like to move to their own little plot of land in the backyard, a little place on the front yard. They want that, but the system sets them up. And I know people hate to say the system. Listen, if you don't believe it's a system, fine. Okay? Maybe because you ain't experienced the system. I'm gonna tell you, I experienced the system. I experienced the system with all the tickets I got when I was young. Every time I turn around, no matter what happened, I didn't even have a fancy car, I was getting a ticket. And I realized at some point, why I keep getting all these tickets? I realized that every time I got a ticket, that means points, that means my license suspended. So I better get a bicycle because now I still got to work. So guess what I'm gonna do? Still drive my car. Once the car get arrested, you drive without a driving license, you suspended. The system got you. You drive it. Once you get that arrest, now we're talking about, now my job saying, oh, you was arrested for something? What you arrested for? Coming to y'all job. I got arrested coming to y'all job. I wasn't out at the club. I was coming to y'all job. I got arrested. So we can look at the system in so many ways. And yes, the system has some benefits, but we have better benefits when we put our heads together as a family and work. And if you want proof of it, go back and look at after Reconstruction, what our people did from nothing to the things they was able to develop and put together. From nothing, from being owned by somebody, within a year, they were up and running in homes with land, doing things. So we have the will in the way, but you can't have that as they say, you can't have that titty out there. That titty, once the titty come, you just jump on it. Oh no, I can't. Oh, I can't go get no. I got it, and that is a big thing. But I think that's also a part of our role as fathers, because many fathers want to be their own man. They want to have their own thing. They want to say, we're not going to take any. And you being too proud? No, it's not being proud. It's being a man and saying that I'm going to lead my family, and we're going to find a way without having somebody give us a handout. Because they don't have to give us, because a handout always means, if they get a handout, that means a hand gonna be always looming around, overseeing and checking what we're doing, because you need another handout.
And here's what I want you to do. Here's the handout, but now this is what I want you to do.
Yeah, the fine print. It's always the fine print. I tell them guys about, I ain't, okay, I'm gonna go a little bit off. I'm just a little vent session. Listen, I watched a lot of YouTube, right? And because we have the show, and these little commercials that come on YouTube telling you, hey man, we made this much money, we got this much money. Listen, listen, no one ever in my life has ever told me how to get money, that it was real. That's like the Nigerian dude sent me the email telling me he got 2 million. Listen, ain't nobody around here giving us free money. Because when did the people who really got money ever told us about how they get the money? They don't. Unless it's some way for them to make money off of me doing it.
I know what you mean, Ron. I get them
calls. And it's sent to us.
Email.
It's sent to us. We see a thing. Listen, them things. Listen, if I get one more check in the mail for $40,000, for $30,000, I don't know why they keep sending me the check. Listen, I don't listen. You think I'm gonna cash this check? You think I can even cash it? No, I already know. Listen, I can read. I ain't just looking at the big part is $30,000 you can cash today, right? I look at it and say, that's interesting. You can have a summer vacation. Then I read the back of it, then a little small print. 208% interest rate. Listen, I'm about to pay 10 times for this. No, sir, buddy. I might as well go on a vacation trip to Chuck E. Cheese. Okay, go down to a place that you can walk in for free and save my money, because that's all you can really do. And that's you bring up a great point, and it's something we have to think about as Black families, mainly Black fathers who are trying to lead our Black families. And when I say lead, I don't want people to get it wrong. We're not trying to dictate our Black families. We're trying to lead them. There's a difference between a leader and a dictator. Some people try to make it seem like we're dictators. We're not trying to dictate, because you can't lead without a co-captain, co-pilot. I say this all the time. In a family, in a relationship, you need two keys. You got two keys. You got to stick them in at the same time, and you got to push the button at the same time. That's a relationship. That's a relationship. If it's only one key and one push button, that's a solo thing. That's just you on your own. That's just you one time. And so it's just a powerful thing. So if we had any questions, any other questions, comments before we come down to the end. I mean, I think tonight was very, I hope that people were watching, people were going to rewatch this. You really got to hear some really good stuff tonight, especially Ed. Thank you for sharing your own personal story tonight. I think it was very beneficial for us to really look at this idea of, you know, what it means to be in a whole nother context of child support versus supporting the child. Because would you describe something that we would have never thought would be a child support versus supporting child issue? And it was very much so.
Well, Ron, I just want to piggyback on what you said to just kind of sum this topic up. And the difference between child support and supporting the child will simply be, back to your point, leading. But because we're not the leaders of every household, so if our significant other moved on, or the mother of our child moved on, and she have her own separate household with her own husband and new family, then if you can't lead them, lift them. And I think we leave ourselves without that option. I'm like, no, you have another option. If you can't lead, lift. Both are equally as important. And sometimes I think we take lifting for granted because everybody wants to be the leader.
Well, I guess that's a good way to end right there. Thank you, Lana, for always coming in. I want to thank all the fathers for coming on, and we're going to close out with our little chant. And we'll see everybody. Oh, well, we don't have show titles yet, but we're going to have our little meeting in a couple of days to figure out what our next show titles will be. But I think this was the last for this series. So, but we'll be back next week. And if you want to have more in-depth conversation centered around this conversation that we're having today, you can definitely look in the chat at the bottom in the chat and join us for Fatherhood Talks, Fathers Only session, where only the fathers come, and we're a little bit more lay our hair down. We lay our hair down. That's a good way to say it. We lay our hair down a little bit more, and with some of the issues and the things we're going to talk about. So welcome, fathers, mothers. If you watch this, you know, you suggest the father to come on and talk. And I say this because I just was looking at the news where I live at, and it came across my boy. I'm out of town, but looking at the news, and I seen in Jacksonville a guy killed the mother of his two kids, and she was pregnant. And every time I see that, every time I hear that, my stomach feels like I wish he would have come. I wish he would come talk. I wish he could have came and talked to us. I just came and listened to us one day. Because a lot of times we take it that this guy's he's an animal. He's a beast. He's a monster. And sometimes, you know, we have met people who come onto these calls who have had these thoughts and feelings, and we were able to talk to them in a way to say, hey, that's not the right way. That's not what I should be doing. Let me find a way to work this out. But if they don't have that outlet, they go to what they know. Sometimes the violence is what they know. Violence is a way to get what they want, how they think that it operates. They just don't care no more. I find that a lot of times they just don't care, because they don't think anybody's here to hear them. There's no one to validate what they have to say, because the system is rigged. They think the system is rigged. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It was just one of those things to say, hey, listen, what I'm saying if you want to join us, you want to watch us, you want to share our show to somebody, you never know what people hear and how they can be exposed to change something in their mind from just saying, you know, that guy's story resonates with me, and maybe I need to call, join in the log and see how it can help before I do something that I regret for the rest of my life. You know, so that's a big thing. So, all right, with that being said, gentlemen, repeat after me. I am.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a man of honor.
I am
I am a man of honor.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a man of courage.
I
I am a man of courage.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a man of respect.
I am
a man of respect.
I say, gentlemen, I say that I am.
I am.
I say that you are.
You are.
You are.
Say that we are.
We
You
are.
are.
Championship
Fathers.
I love to see that, folks. And just so you know, we're not flexing on you. We're holding our family up on our arms. And thank you for joining us, and good night.
Good night.
All right. Good night.